Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. This is Quinny. It's 12:30, Monday afternoon. Win, lose or draw, we are here. And Quinny, I feel your pain on a Monday morning sometimes because I know what you're going through. I know you're rewatching games and analysing them and trying to come up with some kind of semblance of positivity to say, yeah, we got beat, but ... Here's a few positives. Were you able to do that when you rewatched the Dundee United defeat from Tannadice?
Do you know, it's funny, right? Because the replay of the game didn't really show much that I don't think most of us would have felt as it happened, as it unfolded before us. I remember, and I'm pretty sure I tweeted about it or whatever, but I think the first half was all right. It wasn't bad. We were kind of okay. You could see okay, we got a wee shot or two away and we kind of went for it. But for me, the real pain of the weekend, or the real where the game was won and lost and all the rest of it, was the second half. And yeah, watching that back, I don't think there's any positives to take from it. I've seen a lot of, I caught most of your reaction yesterday to your full-time stream, and a few other bits and pieces. I think a lot of people are kind of, you're getting a lot more kind of, I don't want to say anti-Martin, but a lot of people certainly looking at the dugout after this game. And even when you rewatch the second half and try and balance things out as best as you can, it's really hard to defend it, because the second half, the subs, the way we went chasing the game, it was just, I called it amateur hour, my experience of football for myself is amateurs, and it just felt like that, really, to be honest with you. So the first half, there's maybe a positive there if you really wanted to find one, but
I think that's fair. And see, post-match, that's difficult to actually see through the fog, if you like, of emotion. But when you watch it back, and I'm not saying anybody in the comments wants to do this, by the way, because it's far from a vintage performance, but when you watch it back, I tend to agree, and I think that would be reflected by our halftime stream yesterday, Sean and I, speaking about the game, picking out a couple of wee chances. Sinisalo has a save. I'm looking at Kieran Tierney's strike. I'm looking at Ian Atcho's strike and thinking, it's no great, it's no vintage. Blaming the pitch quite a lot at halftime. But I'm thinking to myself, if we do the same in the second half, we'll find a way, because this team has invariably found a way under Martin O'Neill. But we completely lost our way. And there's a phrase in football, Quinny, it was used yesterday post-match. Luke Shanley was talking to Martin O'Neill. The game got away from them. And I totally get that. It's like, right, you're still in it at half-time, 100%. Absolutely. You're thinking, you know what, we're actually able to, although dominate possession, not turn it into chances and shots on goal. But we have control of the game. That's how I felt. But in the second half, it did get away from us. So if we're looking at it from a tactical perspective, do you think the issue actually, even though, contrary to what I've just said, we had a decent first half or an okay first half, do you think some of the issues were in the starting lineup? Now, I'm talking, and we'll come back to some of the rumours that are circulating, and I've got to qualify them as rumours because I can't corroborate them. Araujo's missing from the team at the moment. Svanchara's missing from the team at the moment. And obviously Kasper is, we've spoken quite a bit about that. And also Trusty is, because of the suspension. And there was a question around, does he come straight back in? So there were some selection discussion points before the game. Let's start off with the selection, because a lot of people are focusing on the board, and rightly so, and we will. But we're talking tip of the iceberg stuff here. The guy that picks a team, the management team, the starting 11, did we get it right, do you think?
No, I think the main question mark I had for the weekend, the right back one was a kind of interesting unknown that nobody really knew what the full script was. But for me, when you see McGregor back in training, I don't think any Celtic fan can imagine McGregor's name on the team sheet being on the bench, So it's one of those ones where I was fearful that if he isn't fully fit and he walks straight back into the team, you maybe get a little bit of that, the bad habits of the team come back into it in these types of matches where, McGregor just comes in, does the thing where we move the ball left to right and don't really control the midfield in any way, which is something that Hatate looked like he was starting to get the grips of in the last couple of matches. And so my kind of position on it was, if McGregor's not on to play 90, which is what he normally does, he never gets subbed off, then he should be coming on to the game from the bench. Dundee United were very predictable in how they managed the game, approached the game, and what their players brought to it. And if you've got a non-completely fit or an unfit McGregor, for lack of a better expression, you can't forfeit the midfield in that situation. You would need a McKeown, maybe at Ox, if he's not fit to start, fine, he's off the bench too. But even the physicality of somebody like Bernardo, who's kind of been back in the frame in the last week or two on the bench, off the bench, and that kind of thing. So I was surprised to see McGregor in the starting 11, and I kind of stand by it. The fact that he didn't even get to the 60-minute mark, he wasn't fit to play today. He shouldn't have started the game.
This is the thing that when I'm looking at the midfield, and I think back to a situation previously where Scott Brown was coming to the end of his career, and that discussion point always comes up. His legs have gone. There was talk around Bruni going to Australia, and he proved otherwise, and he stayed for 2 or 3 years, but he was that undroppable force. He was the unmovable object in the Celtic team at that time, very much like what Callum is now. And you get that with captains, of course you do. And you've got the leadership, and you've got the. For me, he's the linchpin of that midfield. He's the orchestrator of the pace of the game, just so that everything goes through him, Quinny. Right. So we've played that way for a long time, and I think there's a fear, a wee bit like Bruni. What happens when we take that cog out? Does the machine stop working? Well, I actually think that in his absence, and it was a forced absence, we proved that we could actually play without him. Right, sometimes it's no ideal, but as you say, other midfielders come into the play. We didn't see Bernardo yesterday. I think going into the game, as well as the personnel, I seen an opportunity, even if he didn't start with a different shape, to mix it up in the second half. That leads us on to things like decision making off the bench, where you see that we need to make a substitution for Donovan, who's obviously hurt, and you've got a like for like change on the bench. Now, by the way, there is an argument to suggest that maybe Tony Ralston starts games like this. Why? Not because he's a technically gifted footballer, but what he does bring to the play is just is sometimes what you need in a game up at Tannadice, with a rotten pitch, really dry. We're up against it in terms of chance creation. You just need to be as solid as you possibly can be. So that's a bit with hindsight, but during the game, there's an opportunity to bring on a right back to replace a right back, and we don't do it. And that results in us playing Hatate at right back and for a spell Yang at right back. Now, these are decisions that you can be forced into decisions based on the personnel that you have available to you due to numerous bad transfer windows, poor squad management, etc., that you inherit, Quinny. But these are on the moment, in-match decisions that I think we got wrong yesterday.
I would agree with you entirely. I think when we made that sub, I actually got kind of excited. It's like, oh, cool, we're just going to go three at the back, because that substitution happened at 1-0, and we're going to, we're just going to put McKeown up next to the forward line and just try and throw the kitchen sink at it a bit more. And even with Hatate being because he was right back, but he kind of was doing the Greg Taylor thing, wasn't he? He was standing next to Oxlade-Chamberlain a bit and playing in front of the defence. But going back into right back, he kind of get done once or twice, which is why I don't think he lasted the game and why they moved Yang there. But again, like you say, it's like, why not change the shape at that point? Really, if you are going to bring somebody different on, like if you're not going to do the Ralston move and just go like for like, then actually do something different rather than putting Hatate there. And like, how many times have we watched it? How many times have you ever watched a football game? And this is a great one for the chat, right? Where you've seen like a player change position, or multiple players change position through the game on more than one occasion. And it works out well. It hardly ever does. You've got guys left wing, right wing, left wingers up front. The centre mid's at right back now, and we'll take him off, we'll put the winger. It just never works. It always just ends in catastrophe. And I think that part of the second half was really the most frustrating. On the fitness thing, I think Iheanacho, I could basically say everything about him that I said about McGregor. O'Neill pre-match even said, I don't even know how long Iheanacho will play today. I know you're live when those things are on, so you might have missed it, but he basically said, God knows how long he'll play, but we'll give it a try. He's earned the minutes, essentially. But knowing that with McGregor, knowing that with Iheanacho, like the sub second half, there was no obvious like, oh, what do we do second half when we need to change things? Or what if Dundee score first? Or what if this happens? Or it was just like, no, McKeown, you go on. You go on, figure it out. Hatate, just kind of don't get done back there. Watch out for us back there, pal. Do two jobs now. And it was just amateur hour second half. It was just throw people on and work it out.
Yeah, I did get that sense. And again, I haven't played or managed to any professional level in this game, but what I try my best to do, Quinny, when I speak to people in the game who are still involved or who have been involved, I just pick their brains about all this kind of stuff in terms of the tactical element, shape, man management, what happens in terms of the dressing room before a game at halftime. Recently, we came back from 2-0 down against Kilmarnock to win 3-2, and it took me back to Neil Lennon's second season in charge, first time round, where we went on to win the league, but we were 3-0 down at Rugby Park and we drew the game 3-3. And Neil Lennon has gone on to say that we don't win that game, he loses his job. But then what happens is it's a strange kind of turnaround. You could bookmark the season between two Kilmarnock games at Rugby Park. We draw the first one 3 each, which was an incredible comeback. And we clinched the league title at Rugby Park. We beat them 6-0. And it was one of the games that the fans were bouncing so much, the TV cameras were doing one of them. So I want to get into the dressing room and say, right, how do you turn that around? What does the manager do? What part does the manager play 45 minutes into a game? So when I was looking at the second half changes, all I saw was kind of like, as you say, throw the boys on and they can work it out. What I wanted to see in match was a situation where we know we've got the personnel to play three at the back, for example, particularly when you're 1-0 down, Quinny, right? You've got Trusty sitting on the bench, put him right in the bang in the centre. You've got Scales to his left and Arthur to his right. Push Tierney up into them, more of an advanced role, and maybe bring on Forrest to play, the flip side on the right-hand side. You can then open up the realms and maybe playing something that resembles a 3-5-2. Play three midfielders, two up top, and see what we can do from there. That would have been more adventurous for me. I think you're also putting Dundee United on the back foot because they have been trained all week defensively to play a very specific style of Celtic and a shape of Celtic, and we just mix it up. I mean, I don't even think it's throwing caution to the wind, Quinny. We had the personnel yesterday in the squad to do that. What do you think's holding us back? Because it wasn't working at that stage at 1-0 down, right? And certainly, the thoughts of 1999-2000 were fresh in my mind when I seen Hatate and Yang playing right back. We mentioned it after the game. Stan Petrov ended up playing fullback for Celtic in John Barnes' season. And it is one of those dysfunctional seasons where you think back to the St Mirren game under Mowbray, where I think at one point Aidan McGeady's playing left back and thumbs up, and Bruni's playing right back, and it's just like chaos. It's just absolutely dysfunctional. It didn't have to be like that yesterday. I actually felt we had the personnel to go 3-5-2 and give Dundee United something different to think about.
Totally. And I was actually thinking about this in the aftermath of this game, but in the January window, when we signed Big Tam and Junior Adamu, obviously we're kind of expecting Iheanacho to be back in the frame back in January. This is obviously we've seen him play at the weekend. Part of that, but if you're of a certain age, which I know you are, like,
thanks,
Martin O'Neill, the Martin O'Neill squad, like, one of the hardest things to remember is how did Martin O'Neill play Hartson, Sutton and Larson all the time? Because they did play together kind of all the time. It's hard to remember one of them being on the bench very often, and I know it was mainly Hartson, if anyone. But that was it. Where's that element into the game where, like, if we are like, okay, McCowan's coming on for Donovan or whatever that, do you want it to be 3-5-2? It could be 4-2. You could think of a million different things. And like you say, there's enough personnel there where you would hope and imagine this is how we're going to shake it up second half. Because when we make those substitutions, Taneke goes onto left wing, Dyson goes through the middle, and then he's in there with three big centre backs. And how many times have we watched that play out and it doesn't work?
Mm-hmm.
And it's the most frustrating thing as a Celtic fan, because you look at the dugout, no matter who's in it, and there's been a few different faces this season, and you think, has this team ever watched these players play before? Like, why are you putting them back up there? We've watched this happen a million times, and it's just not going to turn the tide for us. So I forget where I started or where we started. Well,
it's about shape. It's about shape,
of course. Shape. Yeah,
adventurous. I actually look at. I've not been impressed with Adamu. Like everybody else, I've seen the debut flick back heel. He lays on McCowan against Stuttgart for a decent assist, but I've not really been that impressed with him. But maybe the fact is he's not a lone striker, and you think you're looking at Maeda now. If we're pushing Tierney up to play a more advanced role, and some of his assists have come from that kind of into the second third of the pitch rather than hitting the touchline and just flighting the ball in. Adamu and maybe Maeda playing off his shoulder. These are things that I think we're going to have to try, Quinny, because at the moment we're in a bit of a rut. And I'm not just saying it because we've been defeated. We came through a period there where you were looking at 4 away games and thinking, what on earth are we going to get from Pittodrie, Ibrox, Stuttgart, Ibrox twice? What are we going to get out of that? And we came through them undefeated. We then faced Motherwell, one of many people would say the most impressive footballing sides in Scotland this season. We beat them. So I think that there was a bit of a bounce. Not a complacency, because we haven't seen the performances all season, but there was a bit of a bounce going into this game, which is why it's been so flat since the second half, really. But the injection of maybe being a wee bit more adventurous, I think the reason we didn't do it was because we were playing safe in the 4 games just to get through them. Motherwell, top of the table, virtually, top 4 kind of clash, playing it a wee bit safer. Now, I just think, you know what, you've got to get the shackles off, because we need to find something different from the group of players that we've got, Quinny. Can you see Martin O'Neill doing it? You used a good example of Sutton, Hartson and Larsson. Sutton, in that respect, had to find a slightly different style. He had to drop deeper, sometimes play more of a midfield role, even went as far back as centre-half sometimes. But players can adapt, and I'm talking about a player like Kieran Tierney. Can he adapt to playing more advanced? Absolutely. Yes, he can. And we're in the final bit of the season where, in terms of his sharpness, he's never going to be sharper, mate. I look on the right-hand side, and I think of Forrest, right? Forrest is the evergreen. Yang might start just about every game on the right wing. Forrest can come on for the last half hour, though. There was 2 moments. It wasn't a great game for him, but there was 2 moments where he cuts inside and makes something happen. James Forrest, we're still talking about James Forrest being a guy making something happen. And then, of course, the old school 2 up top, one playing off the shoulder. Give Dundee United something to work against, because Iheanacho, this takes us to the strikers, right? And I've seen all the stats. And by the way, it doesn't make for good reading. The fact that our most prolific striker at this moment in time isn't at the club, because it's Johnny Kenny. No other striker we have at the club has scored more goals than Kenny this season. And, in a nutshell, that's it. And I know, by the way, you could go back to saying that you would rather have kept Kenny as a squad player. You said it, and you continually said it. He's away, and we have no goals in the forwards here. Iheanacho, technically, for me, and yesterday I never changed my mind, is the best player we've got, centre forward, technically, right?
Yeah.
But he was blowing out his proverbial yesterday because he's not been playing football. His first start, I think we worked it out, his first start was like December. He's not been playing. And certainly not domestically either. So I do think it comes to the point, Quinny, where you say, right, we've brought in quite a few forward players. We need to adapt. Going back to the example you gave, let's adapt. Can we do it? Will we do it? Is, for me, I'm going to doubt it. I think we're playing too safe, to be honest with you. How do we progress? There's a minute number of games to go. We have not won this season 7 league games in a row, right? We've not done it this season. The most we've won is 5. I think if we want to win this league, we've got to win all 7. You might get away with 6 in a draw, but we've got to beat Rangers and Hearts at Celtic Park. The last time we did it, last season, we started off with 15 league games unbeaten, and it was 7-1, a draw, then 7-1. So we won 7 twice on the bounce last season. We've not done it since then. And the team that you're looking at the moment in terms of energy levels and quality isn't the team we were looking at last season. So the likelihood of it happening is slim, Quinny. I'm not throwing in the towel yet, but the feeling I'm getting this morning when I wake up is, this is like fairy tale stuff. This is Love Street 86 stuff that we're now looking at. How are you feeling?
Well, like you said, coming into this game, there was like a buoyancy where we're like not optimistic or like, oh yeah, I was optimistic. I'm always optimistic before the game, but in the grand scheme of everything, we all still knew it was an uphill battle and everything, but we'd started to look a bit better, and we won a game by more than 1 goal. We beat somebody 3-1. We actually got some more goals on the board, and
I think we could relax for 8 minutes that day, couldn't we?
Yeah. And part of that was Dyson and Yang were playing a bit differently. They were kind of coming inside, and the expression I like to use is like cheating. We've seen both of them be on the same wing for little periods of the game, which just helps push the agenda forward for the team. And in this game, in the first half, you do get a bit of that again from Dyson and Yang, which is encouraging. And I've thought so far over the last couple of months, the best tandem that we've seen up front is going to be Maeda and Negren. Maeda, by the way, was probably our best defensive midfielder yesterday. I think he won more balls in the middle of the pitch than McGregor or Hatate, running right back from left wing all the way back into the middle. And if you look at the way Negren and Iheanacho played off each other in the first half, particularly the first 25 minutes, there was a few nice wee give and goes around the corner from them too. It never really clicked into too much. So there is with this international break, there is like you said, there's enough players there that have the ability, the complementary kind of styles, a wee variety of options there where we should be able to get a tune out with them. Maybe this international break could open the door for the coaching staff and everyone else to really go out, make some sort of battle plan that's just for this 7 games, how we're going to attack all the opponents, how we're going to maximize everyone that's fit and ready and can contribute to the running, because it has been since January, but it's a series of cup finals from here on in. And I think like, oh, is McGregor fit? Oh, we'll just play you, pal. Or all right, Iheanacho, you've earned some minutes because we've got no idea who to play up front. Stuff like that. It just has to be a lot more deliberate and a lot more set out. And the last thing I'll say on this, right, is football, especially for the players' point of view. And again, I'm pretty sure you'll hear a lot of former players telling you this. Scoring goals should be fun. Winning games should be fun. Playing good football with your team should be fun. And I don't think there's any part of the team. I think Negren and Taneki like playing together. I think Yang and Negren have maybe got a wee bit of thing on the go. There's not too many guys that I look at in any of the Celtic kind of combinations of the team that we've seen, and you think, oh yeah, that's a good partnership. Those guys work well together. They bounce off each other well. It's a whole bunch of guys that are like, and I don't really want to say it's a bunch of individuals because that's not really the point, but the only kind of words I can think of. But I think you all know what I'm saying.
But again, I think that comes down to the fact, I said this, the season Brendan Rodgers took over and he's taken over a treble-winning side from Ange Postecoglou. And the comings and goings for me were far too vast. The churn rate of staff, if you like.
Yeah.
I had a real issue with that because we shouldn't be following up a treble-winning campaign. By the way, this doesn't mean to say you don't progress, because you've got to progress. And we've failed to do that a number of times in my Celtic supporting life. But you've got to do it right. So, when you're bringing in double figures amounts of players in a window, that is not healthy, Quinny, because what you then have is the third of your entire squad. And if they're not settling in and they're adapting and some of them are unhappy and there's maybe a bad egg here or there, then you get a dysfunctional squad where they're not all in harmony. What you want is to tweak. You want to tweak that. We generally lose 2 big assets a season. We generally do, right? That's what we have kind of modelled it on. Who was it this season? It was Kunin and Ida. They were the 2 big players that we sold this season. And that's generally what we do, right? Season on season. So you've got to then replace them and hopefully come out a window maybe 3 or 4 up net. So you're improving the squad. What we're doing, we're just throwing jelly at a dartboard and hoping some of it sticks. It's bizarre. Let's buy 9 players. Let's buy a dozen players. No strategy whatsoever. Absolutely no strategy whatsoever. I'm going to bring in as many of these comments as I possibly can, but there's 1 or 2 little shout outs. And the first one is a big shout out all the way to Ardoyne and our good friend Paddy Lavery, whose son Oren, and I hope that I got the pronunciation correct, has just turned 27. So a big Acsom happy birthday to you. You enjoy it, Paddy. Buy him a pint, buy him a wee jar, and have a great day, my friend. And we'll be seeing you very soon, of course, when we are over in Ardoyne. The other one is from my pal Neely Mockin, who is the son of the great man of the same name. And I love chatting to Neely because he has got a knowledge like you wouldn't believe. And he's got a friend over in Australia who isn't doing so well, but no matter how well he's feeling, he tunes into a Celtic state of mind. So big shout out to Thomas in Oz. And during COVID, Thomas sent us a flag. I really should get it put up here. And it was happier days eventually, just after COVID, actually. It was because it was when Ange came in and he sent us an Australian flag over. So thank you very much for your support, as always. Let's get some of the comments coming through. Always great to hear from you. Katie comes in with a couple of good comments. First one being the board are drunk on power. Now, you might be wondering what the tagline is today. The Celtic board yawns as title challenge faces death by 1,000 cuts. Yes, I stole that last bit from Jim Orr. He's a wordsmith. He writes plays. And I'm just a magpie. I just steal all the wee good bits. Right, so that's it. That's the final bit. What does the first bit mean? Well, you might have seen the scenes after the game, Quinny, where the Celtic supporters are letting the board know what they think about their running of this football club. The people with authority, the people with the power to do something about it aren't us, clearly. I mean, I've never seen, even back in the dark old days of the 90s, so many Celtic fan groups coming together in the one campaign. Now, we already had the Celtic Trust, who have been running for a number of years. I shared a clipping from Not The View from 23 years ago. So I think they're maybe 25, 26 years old. The Celtic Trust bringing kind of like minority shareholders, small shareholders together. And they've been working for a long time on that. But this season, we've seen the rise of the Celtic Fans Collective. We have also seen Celtic Supporters Limited. And when that happens, Quinny, that's because massive groups of fans are unhappy with the running of the club. It doesn't happen every other season. There's another new group. Then we suffer group fatigue. This is because fans are unhappy. And they showed their unhappiness after the game yesterday. And at one point during the game, right, and I don't think it was captured on camera, all Celtic fans against the board, or sack the board, stand up if you hate the board, was being chanted. And we got a gesture from Chris Mackay, which was the yawning gesture, as if to say, tired of hearing this, right? It was a sarcastic gesture, no doubt. I mean, under those circumstances, have a yawn, but do it into your jacket, do it into your bovril, do something. You can, if I'm yawning on this show, you won't know about it. I might contort my face slightly, but you won't know about it. I think to do it under those circumstances, even if it was real, would be ill-advised. And then following that, I got a DM from an Acsom listener who said that he was at the stadium early doors and he saw Michael Nicholson and Mark Hargreaves and Chris Mackay entering the building, and he spoke to them. And Mackay stood behind the aforementioned two, yawning. So I don't know if he's had a late night, but he seems unimpressed and disinterested in what the Celtic fans have got to say. So that's on the back of what Katie mentions there. And as I say, we're talking a lot of tip of the iceberg stuff. It's been the point of no return with regards to the board for a long time for me anyway, Quinny. Yesterday didn't help, did it?
No, far from it. I think every time you just see just how patchwork the squad is, and especially like I was borderline speechless about it in January, and I'm still like, I can't even believe it really happened, how we spent zero in the January window when again, the thing with Celtic, which is the most frustrating like detail of them all, is the club has never had more things going for it. It's never been richer. It's never had access to more money via the transfer market or even via the Champions League. Hate to say that at this point in time, it feels ridiculous, but genuinely, like, the club has just never been better. No debt, cash reserves go up year on year, sell players, sell on clauses. All went to Turkey in January. We probably made money in the January transfer window through that. And I think there's maybe something else that happened, season ticket sales, the merch which no one's buying. Some of it's really nice, you know what I mean? So it's not like there's tons of stuff it should be the golden age. It should be completely everything's in our direction and everything's going well. And when you see just, again, everything though, when you see a match like that, it really just recrystallizes how have we ended up in this situation here? How have we allowed, and it's not us as fans, obviously, because we are powerless to the situation, but the people who allegedly, and again, when I'm thinking about this stuff, the Dermot Desmond statement always jumps back into my mind, because everything that the club say, they keep saying we're doing a great job and we're the reason for all the good stuff that's happened. And they, like, I think reasonable people hear them saying that and think, right, well, they're saying that in public, but behind closed doors, they must really know, oh yeah, we've effed this up and we better try harder and we'll correct these mistakes. Behind closed doors, we won't admit it publicly, but behind closed doors, we'll get our house in order, we'll learn and we'll improve. But then in the January window, they literally do everything that they have been doing for the last 10 years or whatever. Loans, free transfers, EPL, has-beens, rejects, been there, done that, whatever you want to call them, and everything else in between, because they genuinely believe. And to bring in Dermot, like when Brendan left, he said everything was cool except for Brendan. Brendan's the one that made all this a bit. If he wasn't here, everything would have been tickety-boo. And then you add that into, they genuinely believe everything that they've been telling us for the last little while. They genuinely believe that they're world class. They really believe that. And again, I did this on my own channel. I think it'd be probably fair game here as well. Anyone in the chat that doesn't think they would be able to do a better job in the transfer market than anyone at Celtic right now, feel free to raise your hand. I'm pretty sure no one will do it. I think every Celtic fan around the world genuinely believes, without any illusions of grandeur or being petty, they could do a better job than these people. It's got to that point where everyone sees, I could do a better job than spending zero. I could have spent more than zero on the squad in January. I could have gave Brendan Rodgers a transfer budget that amounted to the same amount we spent when we were eliminated. Before we were eliminated, I could have said to him, you can have that money now, Brendan, go and beat Kairat for us.
Yep.
And I think everyone around the world would agree they would do a better job. And that's the crazy thing about it, is sometimes in years gone by when things haven't been like smooth sailing and maybe some things have been good, but I think everyone would realize, oh yeah, it's a really hard thing to do. And oh yeah, probably lots of stuff you can't appreciate and factor in, and it goes behind the scenes. But for how badly it's been ran, particularly this year, I don't think anyone would give them that. I think everyone would accept. I would still do as bad at all that stuff as they would, but I would also do better at some of the blatantly obvious stuff that we do so terribly.
Well, you're right, right? And I think also sometimes, and I see this in different walks of life, is that people try to complicate what they do to make them appear better at their job.
Yeah.
And when it comes to player identification, let's not forget what that means. Let's not forget that identifying players that might improve your squad isn't an exact science, but also it's not hocus pocus, right? This is the thing. The club wants you to believe that every January transfer window is a difficult transfer window. We make it difficult. We actually create that situation. The good thing about keeping a journal, which I do, not a diary, a journal, is that I keep a note of everything that happens in the world of Celtic, because I prepare for every single day. And I'm just having a look through these ones near the end of the, and I think I found the 2 players. So the 2 players that Martin O'Neill more or less confirmed were the 2 guys we were bringing in late in the window. Quinny, you probably would have remembered this off the top of your head. It was Jed Jemis, you'll remember, was playing in Serie B at the time, and Damir Redzik. So these were wingers that we were bringing in. In terms of a striker, we had been previously interested in Kasper Hoch, or Ho, right? But nearer the end of the window, if you go back to the press conferences, and they're all on the Sky Sports social media channels, one of the pundits asks Martin O'Neill about these 2, and he names the 2 guys. And Martin O'Neill answers in such a way where he says something along the lines, and I'm paraphrasing, you wouldn't be a million miles away with those 2 players. Now, that was like a day or 2 before the window shut. We didn't get any of those 2 over the line. So yesterday, when I was trying to make sense of who's to blame here, there is a responsibility, and who's to blame? People are saying, you can't just forget about O'Neill. He's the guy that okayed all the transfers. Well, there's okaying transfers and there's getting your transfer targets. And that's 2 completely different things. Because if you're in the last day of the window and your target number 1, 2, and 3 in various positions have all flown the nest elsewhere because we've not got the deals over the line, you're then scraping about number 4 and 5 target. So you're definitely not going to be happy with them. You might get 1 or 2 nuggets out of that, but that's not a strategy. And that's where I feel, as great as O'Neill has done, he's been let down massively, because those two guys had to be signed because Martin O'Neill wanted them and believed that they were going to do the job to improve us between then and the end of the season. We didn't get them. Did we get Mvuka instead? Did we get Adamu instead? Because if so, what a stramash that's been. That's basically been a terrible bit of recruitment. But it's not the guys that O'Neill wanted. So I think it's easy to say, it's difficult to sign players. Quinny, we don't have to know the ins and outs of the contracts. We don't need to know financially how all that works. That's why you've got financial people at the football club and people with a legal background at the football club that can do the contracts. But player identification, because we're all football heads, that's something we can do. And we would all have different views on who we should and shouldn't sign. You know, Kieran Bowie's name was mentioned yesterday. Josh Mulligan was mentioned in the January transfer window. Would Maswanisi have done a better job than any of the strikers that we've got at the football club? I think most people would say yes. I think the transition from Motherwell to Celtic, when you're playing in the same league and you're prolific, would be flawless. I think we were in a good position when we had Stephen Welsh out at Motherwell and we called him back. You use him as a tool to get Maswanisi into the side. I just don't think we're good enough at it. And that's not Martin O'Neill's fault, Quinny. I mean, he can only deal. And by the way, we've already criticised his team selection, his substitutions, and his shape. So there's obviously a shared responsibility. But when it comes down to personnel and you don't have the players you wanted, it's been an issue with Brendan Rodgers. It's been an issue with Martin O'Neill just this season. So that isn't the manager's fault, is it?
No, and I think there's a really good parallel you can bring to the situation. I was at Brendan Rodgers' first press conference for his return, for the second stint, and I asked him a big question about why he came back, recruitment changes and all that kind of stuff. One of the things that he said to me in response to that was he thinks this time around, obviously this has now been and gone, the biggest part of his job will be who he doesn't sign. Or something to that effect, who I don't bring into. That was one of the big kind of quotes he kind of gave me from that. And if you go back to the beginning of the January window, and again, all the stuff you mentioned, Sky Sports footage for Martin O'Neill, the beginning of the January window, he's speaking in very similar terms, where it's about quality, and we need to add in. He's very steadfast in what the parameters are, or where the bar's at for what we need in the window. And as we get towards the end of the window, that bar just slides all the way down, all the way down to Oxlade-Chamberlain in the 4th of February or whatever that ended up being included on.
Well, I think you've made a great parallel, because in the summer window it's Iheanacho, and in the winter window it's Oxlade-Chamberlain, and that is, as much as I rate both of those players, by the way, that is you scraping the barrel. That's free agents who haven't played a lot of football, Quinny, and you need a body in, and you're taking a chance. That is absolutely a punt, even though they've got massive careers behind them. It is a punt at that stage.
Yeah, completely. And I think like the thing with punts, and again, like I don't think anyone would rule it. Like sometimes, bringing an older guy in that's free or available, it could work. And bringing in young prospects, of course. Our problem, particularly with the guys, like I think you've brought in a really good point there, which I do want to keep at the front of the conversation, that some of these guys might not have been what Martin O'Neill was starting the January window in his vision of, and we've dropped the ball behind the scenes on closing deals, on making packages attractive, or getting things over the line. The boy Gajemis that you mentioned turned us down to stay in the Serie B title hunt. Like that's what he said. He didn't even leave. He stayed at Frosinone. I checked there because somebody in the comment section asked. He's played 9 games since the January window closed, 4 goals and 1 assist from right wing. And that he rejected Celtic to stay in the Serie B title run. The other guy went to Salzburg, so there's maybe a bit of wages, maybe there's a wee bit of, I fancy Salzburg better than Glasgow, whatever. But one way, shape or form, we are not convincing guys that playing for us is better than winning Serie B. It's just...
That's a worry.
That's where we're at.
Because there is also this word overused, until somebody gives me a better one, I'm going to use it, narratives. And sometimes people use the narrative of, oh, well, they turned us down. Well, I would go one layer below that and say, why? Why has he turned us down? Why have we not made it a good enough proposition to come to Celtic Park? Because there was days in the past, and again, people laugh at me when I say this because I don't think I've ever got over it. We've been turned down by guys in the past like David Ginola, right? And you kind of get it. I mean, Newcastle's not got better weather than Glasgow, but the Premiership, and by the way, he was very close to signing. He was up here and there was meetings and all the rest of it. And that was where the immortal line from Fergus McCann, very skillful player. He's got international pedigree, but can he do it at Brockville on a wet Tuesday night? And McCann was getting kicked under the table as if to shut up, stop trying to put him off signing for Celtic. So there are occasions where, the signing gets away from you. If you're chasing somebody in Serie B, I'm sorry, that's not an excuse for me. This is Celtic. You should be able to get that deal done, Quinny, right? And by the way, we could have been sitting here criticising the player, he's never good enough, we should never sign for Serie B. We will never know. The fact remains, the person that was signed was not the first choice, wasn't the second choice, maybe not even the third choice. And that's a problem, because that means that we're failing at the point of getting the deal done. So that's where you're looking upstairs. So people think, oh, you're board bashing. This is how football works. The identification process is one thing. Getting the deals done is something else, and we're not getting them done properly. Now, by the way, the pitch was rotten yesterday. We've got to take that on board. We didn't adapt to it, I don't think, as well as Dundee United do. I mean, they play on the park. It was a shocking pitch. I actually don't think you should be able to play on a pitch like that at this level, Quinny. Terrible.
Yeah, I think that's all quite right and fair. I get that, but I can't really talk about the pitch, to be honest with you. It's not as if we went to Armenia or we went to Kazakhstan or some. They've
got better pitches.
Yeah, maybe, probably, but like we have played on bad pitches. This team, these players have all played on bad pitches. We got into the box a couple of times. I don't really think it is a factor in how the game unfolds. And you can see some passes were getting caught on the grass and get caught under people's boots once in a while. Fine, but I don't think it's material, to be honest with you. I really don't. Both teams need to play on it, as everyone says. And like I feel, I seen a great Twitter post. It was one of those big popular accounts. It's like just a Celtic fans, like CM67 or something. But he said watching that game was like watching someone play Pro Evo on the PS2, just with the way the pitch looked and like the way the ball went in the game and everything. And I think that's a pretty good description of it. It definitely plays a factor, but I'm just not really in for giving it any weight or any. Because it could have been worse.
Well, there's also
maybe not, but you know what I'm saying. Like,
no. By the way, I wouldn't use it as an excuse because we weren't good enough, right? The selection wasn't good enough, neither were the substitutes. The desire and the hunger, all these things that should be prerequisite for a Celtic player, weren't there for me, unfortunately. But the pitch, I just think in the Premiership, if we're going to try and build the brand of Scottish football, let's do the simple things right. Let's make sure you've got a groundsman who makes sure that there's actually some grass on the park, because when you watch it on the TV, as you say, it's a joke. It was terrible. It's tin pot. And we always defend the game. See, like when somebody like Jamie O'Hara comes on bleating about Scottish football and Stockport would win the league and all the rest of it. By the way, they'd maybe give us a decent game now. We always like jump to the defence of Scottish football. We always do that. That was tongue in cheek, by the way. I'm not agreeing with Jamie O'Hara. I don't think I ever will. But we always stand up for the Scottish game, Quinny. We're passionate about Scottish football. We're passionate about Celtic. Yeah, I don't think we help ourselves. We absolutely don't. I always laugh. Virtually every live game, somebody goes to take a corner, and what's behind them? That is like prime. That's the prime bit of the ground. And instead of having a beautiful advertising board, a bit of artwork or a mural, it's a skip. It's just a skip sitting in the corner Scottish football stadium. That's the go-to. There you go. It's just a big yellow skip. Thanks
with
everybody for getting
next to
it. Loads of cones and Harris fencing and all that kind of stuff. Oh, that's brilliant. John Mullane, see, here we go. This saddens me to a degree. Said I would take a break from all things Celtic. This is what it's doing to Celtic fans, and this is sad for the next 2 weeks. But you came anyway, John. So please, even if it's a form of therapy, come in. I mean, we've had worse times on a Celtic state of mind. Even though we finished second during the COVID lockdown season, we've had worse times. I'm sure we have. Stephen White says, not sure when it happened, but this is not my club anymore. Again, see that connection and the loss of identity. I'm hearing a lot of Celtic fans talking about this. The days before the Almaty game, when we didn't sign a striker, maybe it's not my club anymore. The Celtic hierarchy, right? The bean counters, they need to realise that this is a multifaceted operation. And whilst you've got to look after the finances of the football club with their 2012 and their 1994 PTSD, you've got to also look after the fans. And you've got to mend and build bridges with the fan base. They're making no efforts. I'm sorry, they're making no efforts whatsoever to do it, Quinny. I mean, this is the issue here. At no point since this Unity chat that we got on Celtic TV have we seen any real efforts to create that unity. Now, there's quite a worrying rumour circulating at the moment in relation to a couple of our players. And when we talk about things, we always qualify it, Quinny, by saying, look, I know this is true, or I've heard this or this. This is merely a rumour. You might have seen it doing the rounds. Why are we talking rumours? Well, because Araujo and Sanchara were out the team. That's why. That's why we're doing the rumours. Because Sanchara was written off as being ill, just like Kasper Schmeichel was written off as being ill when he was clearly injured. We get told that players are ill when something else is afoot. So you take all the information, you bring it together. Would Araujo and Sanchara have bettered their chances? Absolutely, they would have done. Sanchara's came onto a game. I don't think we'll sign him permanently. He's come onto a game. He's getting in the mix. Big high pressure moments, and he's taken penalties, and he's had an assist, and he's scored from open play. Would he have improved it? Would he have started yesterday a fit? Absolutely, ahead of Iheanacho. Would Araujo have started over Donovan? Yes, unequivocally. He would have started. Easy for me to say. But they didn't. And then the rumour mongers start. Now, on the one hand, Quinny, I'm saying, right, I've always got to be careful with the rumours, because there's a lot of rumours about Acsom that aren't true. But on the other hand, it's a bit suspicious that Araujo has disappeared from view. If anybody's wondering what the rumours are, the rumour is he's back in Bournemouth training with his team. And he'll continue to train there until after the international break if he comes back. People then add two and two together and say, well, they were the two guys front and centre of the celebrations in the Glasgow Boozer. Araujo hanging from a pipe and Sanchara with the Rangers, all the nonsense on his phone. What do you make of all this? I dearly hope, on the back of the Kasper Schmeichel thing and all the other dysfunction we have at the football club right now, that there aren't issues with the behaviour of two players who would improve or start in 11. Because if so, it's just too many of the 1,000 cuts. It's just too many cuts that's going to end our season.
It would make total sense. I thought it was dead surprising to hear Martin O'Neill say in the pre-match press conference that or pardon me, the pre-game interview that he done when Chvancharas went from starting and being, like you say, kind of lead striker all of a sudden to dropping out of the team altogether. Iheanacho to start, Adamu back on the bench after Adamu went missing. And he labelled it as, he said he'd been ill through the week. We've seen the training footage that came out on Friday, the training session Friday. Iheanacho was, Chvanchara was there. So I think it does add up to, there's maybe something like that going on where there's some sort of internal discipline thing or management situation where they've maybe crossed the line, if the rumours are to be believed, or maybe have a quiet celebration and maybe it was a bit too loud and a bit too public, and Martins came down on them for it. I would be disappointed if that's kind of where we found ourselves, because as you can see for the game, and even the comments I mentioned before, Martin O'Neill didn't even know how long Iheanacho was going to get in the match, you know. So we're turning up to the game with second and third options because, and again, like you do need to stand, you do need to control the dressing room. Who am I to kind of question Martin in that regard? But you would think, with how dire the season is, there's other ways of disciplining, and you know, again, Donovan was fine, but the right hand side was non-existent. We didn't do anything down the right hand side. Tierney didn't even really get that high on the pitch that often. So would the Araujo have made a difference to the team? I think absolutely you would say that, because Donovan had 2 crosses that both ended up in the stands. So
I know,
even if you just think of one of them would have went into the box, that's an improvement, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. No, you just brought to mind actually, because with anybody coming through, I'm always very supportive of them. But there was a few moments yesterday that you're right, the quality wasn't there. When I heard about the Araujo and Chvanchara rumours, you know, you look at some of the things you've heard in the past in relation to when we're signing players, and word comes from above that Dermot Desmond in particular doesn't like full sleeve tattoos or Instagram profiles. So stay away from the likes of Louis Palma. Absolute gibberish and nonsense, if true or even if not true. There's a bit of truth in some of this, though, unfortunately. And the truth is that both players were out, and we missed them. We absolutely did miss them. And then at the end of the season, you can look back on moments, I guess, whereby you think we could have done this better and we could have done that better in game. And I look at the Hibs game, I look at the Hearts 2 each draw because of the trusty red card, which I still am not convinced should have been a red card. And these are just tiny, tiny margins. But then you look at this and you think, right, we could have played 2 guys and we decided not to because of a disciplinary issue. You talk about, I mean, what level of discipline are we talking here? You know, it's not as though they've been locked up. I mean, I've spoken to some guy, and I wouldn't share the specifics. I've spoken to some of our heroes who have told me about players in the 80s and 90s that would curl your toes getting locked up and the club managing to hush it up and going out and winning man of the match and all this kind of stuff. These things happen, right? So if it's a disciplinary issue, that worries me greatly. It's the worst thing that could happen right now. It isn't over until it's over, and I'm a very optimistic person, just naturally, very optimistic, whereby if any kind of a challenge is set down, I'll think, what's the best way of overcoming it? And this is definitely one of those. So I'm not writing it off, absolutely not. I never will until it's mathematically impossible. But what I am looking at is the amount of people that are saying, right, 7 cup finals, absolutely get it. And the likelihood of either Hearts, Rangers or Celtic winning the next 7 games. Here's the likelihood. You can obviously give me the odds if you want. But if you go at the top of the league, Hearts, the most league games in a row they've won this season is 6. Right? So 7 games to play. They would need to be at the absolute top of the form, which they're not at the moment. They've lost 3 of the last 7 league games. They're not in their best of form. They would need to be at the peak of their powers that they've been at this season to win 7 on the bounce. Likelihood levels, unlikely. It's unlikely. Rangers, the most games that they have won on the bounce in the league this season is 6. They've done it once. So they have won 6 games in a row. They're eking the results out without the 3 defeats in the last 7. What's the likelihood of them winning 6 or 7 in a row? I would say marginally higher than Hearts, the way the form guide is going over the last half dozen games. Celtic. Now, I said this earlier on in the show. The most we've ever won this season on the bounce in the league is 5. We've never won 7 in a row this season. And you would need to go to the beginning of last season where things were a wee bit more happy. And obviously we had spent decent money in the summer and we went in with, breaking the transfer record on 2 occasions in one window. And we went on to almost win a treble and progress to the playoffs of the Champions League. We won 7 games in a row twice. with one draw in between. So in terms of likelihoods, if you just want to take that as raw data, Quinny, the likelihood of any of the teams, pretty unlikely, but at the moment, in terms of form, it's more likely that Rangers will win most of their 7 games than any of the other 2 challengers. How do you feel about that?
I don't know. I think Hearts are in pole position. I think that I kind of agree with a lot of the chat. It's probably best accepting that we're not going to get the points required. I find it really hard to imagine a team wins the league. Anyone, whoever, what their name is, with the amount of losses on the record that we already have, we need someone to get really close to us on that count for us to even think about catching them, because we've just drawn a lot less than the other 2. I think with Shankland coming back, and I know there's been a lot been made about McInnes and whatever, right? But I just think they've got it to lose. I think everyone's going to beat everyone. I don't think it's going to be smooth sailing. Hearts' last game before the split is Motherwell. So if there was a wee kind of, equilibrium kind of opportunity maybe to come pre-split, it might be right before the last, So it's definitely not over till it's over. I'm kind of, being really aware of that as well. But I just find it really hard to imagine that we could win all the games that we need to. In terms of Rangers, like, I get the form guide maybe kind of paints them out to maybe be more likely to do it. But I don't know. I just think McInnes, for all as much as he's never won a title and all the rest of it, I just think out of Danny Rowell and McInnes is the one that's going to get through. He'll win a game 1-0, whereas Rangers could draw a game 3-3. It's a must-win kind of situation if that's a way of summing it up.
Yeah, absolutely get it. And some great comments coming through in relation to this. As I say, it ain't over till it's over. Katie, you were in earlier on, you're back in the state we are in. It's so hard to take and also avoidable. That's the frustration, isn't it? So much self-harm here. I cannot see beyond the board throwing us over a cliff. Question is why? I always think when I talk to Alan Morrison and he says to me, when something like this is happening and people have conspiracies or theories around the motivation for it, he says, never look beyond incompetence. Go to incompetence before conspiracy. So the why, I feel, Katie, is an incompetence rather than a deliberate act. And I know a lot of people, and by the way, no wonder, because it looks deliberate. It actually looks deliberate, but I actually going to put it in the incompetence bracket. What are the Araujo rumours? That's all they are at the moment, Robertson. I think that's maybe Alan.
Some people, there was a rumour that he had a kid, which is false as well, I believe.
Yeah.
And there was just lots of like, oh, he's had a weigh-in, or he's in Bournemouth, or no, he's in Glasgow. There was like 2 or 3 different things that no one really knows. I don't think he's had a kid. I think that's been cleared up as not true, but there was just lots of unknown.
They can be very damaging. I remember a rumour circulating about Ian Atcho at some stage this season during one of his disappearing acts, and nothing else was heard of it. So people, it's an attention thing whereby, particularly online, they need that dopamine hit of attention. So believe it or not, people make stuff up. It's absolutely sad. And let's just hope that, there's maybe a niggle here or there, or there's been a request maybe by Araujo to do something that involved his family either down south or in Mexico, and he's been given an extended international break. I don't know. I'm kind of hoping that's the case. I hope they come back all guns firing from the international break with not only Araujo and Sanchara back, but also maybe Alistair Johnston and Arnie Engels. I feel a lot better with those 4 guys in my starting 11. I am not a number, says Hail Hail Boys, Exile Desmond, House of Cards will collapse. I think, again, I went back to this earlier, there's groups of Celtic fans putting in a lot of hours and effort in relation to trying to find a way to get through to the club, really, and to make a difference. And I will continue to support both of the groups that have emerged this season, even though officially Acsom are not a part of any group. We are independent of all groups. We want what's best for Celtic. So when you see a group of fans coming together, we'll support you. We'll have you on Acsom. We'll talk to you. And we've done that throughout the season. Rollo Tomasi on the X platform. If we are going to go down, which looks more likely than not, let's at least go down fighting. I think this is what I was talking about earlier. Be adventurous, Quinny. Be adventurous. Stop playing with this fear that we're going to get beat. Because you know what? Yesterday happens. Go out there and open up a bit. Play a different style of football. You might win the game 4-2 rather than 1-0. And we might actually be entertained. When was the last time we were entertained watching a game involving Celtic? It's frightening. It really is. You're probably looking at maybe some of the Europa League games this season. Champions 67. The team is weak. Nobody to take the game by the scruff of the neck. I think that's the reason that we throw Callum McGregor back in every time he's fit, Quinny, because you want him to do that. You want him to grab the game by the scruff of the neck. And we've got AJSC Tech, long-time commenter, always appreciate your words. Acsom, forgo the Celtic media passes. Deactivate from social media opinions. Acsom is meaningful and truthful. Don't acknowledge detractors. That's a very good frame to look at it, frame of mind to be in. And it's very good advice. So thank you very much for that as well. And Ian McMillan comes in to say, PJ, tell us please about people at the club actively working against Acsom. I missed the after-match chat yesterday. If true, it's an absolute disgrace at this point. Ian, that's all I can say. But there are numerous examples of this that I am currently exploring and looking into, and I'll keep you updated with any developments on that. But because of the nature of it, I can't give any specifics at this particular time. Now, the last time we won 7 games in a row, Stevie Boy makes a great point. That was with a happy Dyson. Now, again, you know, it's one of these ones where if you open it up, you try something a wee bit different, because if we go down, let's go down swinging, Quinny. Play Dyson off the shoulder of the fit forward. Now, that fit forward, I'm hoping, is Franchara. It might be Iheanacho. It might be Adamu, but play him off the shoulder. See, yesterday with Iheanacho, we know how bad the striker situation is. See, when the ball comes to him, Quinny, that ball sticks to Iheanacho, doesn't it? I mean, I don't think he's great at winning the high balls. We tried that too often with him, actually. 2 defenders round about him. But see, like when the ball comes to him in the box, that ball's not leaving his foot. It's unbelievable, you know, and then he'll sometimes get crowded out and he'll lay it off, which he did a few times, or he was able to do that drawback and get a shot in. He had a very, very good chance. Iheanacho, for me, still got a bit of quality. He still has a bit of quality, but how we're actually deploying him, I don't think suits him.
Yeah, I say, well, yesterday he did have some nice touches. I quite liked the chance that Tati opened up for him where he had to run the channel. We had a kind of first-time shot from the left-hand side. And I think you're quite right. He's very good with the ball in his body, with the ball between his feet. You can tell as a guy, and we all remember those training videos from the summer when we signed him. Like, you can tell it's a guy that's worked on his individual game a lot. Like, when the ball comes to him, he knows how to control. He knows how he's going to get a pass out to someone. And yeah, like, he's the most kind of wily player we've got. You know, he's more. And again, when you watch the highlights back, you'll see that, you know, Ross Graham had a real handful trying to keep him shut down. But, you know, I was on here not long ago saying I think Iheanacho's not been playing down to money or contractual stuff. But I think really what you see for Martin Neal's comments in the game, like I mentioned before, and what Iheanacho did, particularly in the second half, is his fitness is just not there. You know, like, we're picking him not knowing how many minutes he's going to get. I thought first half he did well enough, but you see the problem where he does drop deep to maybe take Graham out of the picture and maybe link up with someone. He's just not got that turn. He can't turn and then run. You know, if we let Yang off the leash or Dyson gets played in behind, they're then get into the box. And if Negren's behind Iheanacho, which has been the case, we've then got nobody to like finish the job. You know, we've got wingers running into the box with too many defenders in front of them. And yeah, did we maximise them? To come back to your question, I would say probably not, but it was kind of nice how we did link up at times also. And it's maybe more of a fitness thing rather than how he was played.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of felt for him a wee bit in that respect when you look at just the lacking minutes that he's had this season. Now, Tam, Celtic, I'm bringing this up because I think we need to be cheered up. So you're saying in Motherwell last day celebrating Celtic's league, it's in the stars. Listen, I hope you're right. I hope it's all part of the big master plan that's going to give us a last day win circa 40 years ago at Love Street, 1986. I hope you're right. I really do. And obviously that will also exercise the demons of a last day league defeat at Fir Park previously as well for Martin. I'm going to finish off last couple of minutes here. Bring Ange back. Alexander makes a point. I don't think Ange would come back, and I don't think that's going to be on our radar, Alexander. If I could choose one manager, it would be him. But the type of manager, Quinny, we spoke quite a bit last week about Jens Bertolascu. My take on it is, whilst I've been as impressed as everybody else this season, I think he's done really, really well at Motherwell. For me, he's not done enough to become Celtic's manager, but also we need a very specific type of manager as well, particularly going into next season. You imagine what it's going to be like going into next season, not only the rebuild of the team, we need a restructure in the various departments within the club. We need the boardroom looked at. I mean, I was going to say empty there. That ain't going to happen, but we definitely need changes in the boardroom at executive level. So the manager for me is going to be generated by the type of manager we need as much as the person and the personnel. We need someone who's talismanic. We need somebody who, and this is why we have gone to Brendan Rodgers for a second time. This is why we've gone to Martin O'Neill for a second and a third time. It's the type of person. And by the way, someone made a brilliant point, and I can't remember where I read this, so it's not my thinking. It's not an original thought. And they said that if you look in the modern era, in terms of trophies won, impact, success, the modern era of Football Manager, the top two are, and you can argue the toss who was better, Martin O'Neill and Brendan Rodgers. Now, I know how great Ange was, but he was only here for 2 seasons, right? Martin O'Neill and Brendan Rodgers. And if Martin O'Neill and or Brendan Rodgers can't make it work, there's something wrong at Celtic. And I think in this season of all season, that was a great way to sum it up. Do you agree with me, though? Or would you go left field? Do you even consider Askew as left field? Where are you with the manager, Quinny?
I think if we get Askew, I'm more sad about it than anything. Because I think it's a sign of, like, again, I did a stream on the channel on Celtic here like a week or two ago. And if you look at the squad where it sits right now, we've also got a lot of loans, guys out of contract, end of the summer. So we're naturally just going to free up a lot of the wages. But if you were expecting Engels, Hitate, Maeda, Bernardo, there's maybe 2 or 3 other guys you could add onto that list, maybe Trusty, for example. And I asked my live chat to vote on this, right? But all the players you would expect to leave, right? My live chat voted, you would probably expect to get £40 million in the summer if all of those players left. So if we have so think about the number of those players, never mind the level of them. But if you have that amount of quality leaving, never mind how much quality we are currently lacking and missing in the team, we're going to bring in, let's just call it 30 if you want to be pessimistic, or 20 if you want to be really super pessimistic. If we get Askew in, I don't think we spend 20 million in the summer, gross, never mind net. And we need a manager, like you say, that is going to build a team, it's going to build a squad, because we've got the resources to do so. We've got the desperate need for it to be rebuilt and reimagined. And you know, it's a clean slate opportunity that maybe you would hope and pray that the club grasp with 2 hands and give to I don't know if a talismanic manager is maybe the way of putting it, but someone that's done something similar before, of build a squad, spend money wisely, and, you know, make a generation out of it rather than a 1 season kind of wonder type situation. So if we get Askew, I will be sad, because I think we'll spend 18 million in the window, just to put a number out there. I personally, if we were going to go down that negative route, which is just how I'm thinking about it in my head, I'd probably rather John McGlynn, on the basis of he's just got way more experience. I think his job at Falkirk is maybe not as impressive on the eye as Motherwell have been this year, but he's been around the block once or twice. If we're going to go like cheap and nasty and get someone from within the league and just try and like, oh, let's stay 1 point ahead of Rangers again, let's try that one more time. He's been at the club before. He's got a wee bit more of the old school about him. And the style of football was quite Celtic as well. So nothing against Askew. I'm not saying that to be different or anything, but I think the one thing I've learned as a person from the Wilfred Nancy thing is experience is super valuable as a Celtic manager. Again, a lot of people are trying to rewrite history and say Nancy should never have been interviewed or never been given the job. I think that's a bit harsh. He was a league title winner. He did have a nice style of football. And if he should have been a candidate, obviously we can all say now as times went out, he should never have got the job. And the reason for that is his career is far too short. He didn't have the minerals, he didn't have the material, he didn't have the experience to come into this situation, and he changed everything too quickly. He tried to sack the goalie coach, all the stuff. You know, he just made too many mistakes because he's inexperienced. Now, Askew might not try and sack Stevie Woods, right? But he will still have inexperience to cut at us. You know, he'll need to cut his teeth to some regard to level up to us. And maybe McGlynn has a bit of that too, right? Fine, whatever. But I think he'll have a lot less than that. That's probably the reason that Ange is such a success, because he had about 2 lifetimes of experience before coming to Celtic.
Absolutely.
You know?
That's why I didn't like the comparisons between Ange and Nancy, because Ange was a completely different appointment. But I do think that if you look at it, we're going to have to tread very carefully as to the type of manager that we bring in, not just who it is and what they've done. The type of manager, that talismanic figure who either has been a figure at Celtic previously in that capacity, or even as a player, or he's someone who has achieved at a high level. And I know that there's a certain type of manager that Dermot Desmond likes. And we know the situation with regards to the fact that one shareholder shouldn't have that level of power, but at Celtic they do, and that's a much deeper issue, not the tip of the iceberg issue, the much deeper issue that we could go on and on and on about, and we continually talk about it. But I don't expect Jens Bertolascu to be the manager of Celtic. Last week, what I said when I had the discussion with Brian and Jim on the Friday is a lot of people get blown away by the left field style of appointment, the sexy manager coming in new. Is he any better? And the example I use, not because I want him to be the manager, because I don't think he should be, is he any better than John McGlynn? And I don't know if he is. I really don't know if he is. I mean, McGlynn's got a smaller budget coming up from Falkirk, and it's not just this season that he's done well. I remember him playing Brendan Rodgers' Celtic last season, and Rodgers said it's the best team they've played at that point during that 15-game unbeaten run, by the way. And he says Falkirk coming in the cup was the best team they'd played. So, you know,
I heard you saying that.
Yeah, I'm not sold on it at all, Quinny.
Because I remember thinking last week, and yeah, I might have been in the car listening to you or somebody certainly, but probably yourself if that was a chat you had last week. But I remember thinking, imagine John McGlynn just change his name to Jens Bertolascu and change his name to John McGlynn. Would you look at the guy that's got Falkirk from League One to this league on no budget and recycling Celtic and Rangers youth players and, you know, like just Scott Bain and goals and stuff like that, and managing to get something going? Or the guy that's just showed up and, yeah, he's, you know, tapped into something clearly, but very much just showed up, you know. Again, the experience for me is the one thing I've learned from Nancy is just a non-negotiable for Celtic, you know, is going for where we're at now. You know, I'm not going to be jumping up in joy for someone with a minimal track record.
I'm the same. You need stature, and you definitely need stature at this state of the game.
Stature's a great word.
Aye, it's not like, you know, Brendan Rodgers seen out his contract, we won 5 in a row and we move on, and that's nowhere we're going to be this pre-season. We're going to be in a completely different place. Now, thank you every single person for getting involved after the game, straight after the game. Emotions are running high. Go and watch the game if you dare, and then you can kind of view it slightly different. Poor performance. The wheels might have come off. Maybe Martin O'Neill has wrung out as much as he can from this squad of players. I hope that's not the case. I hope Tim Tam, who came in earlier on, is right, and we managed to pick up, and we're still in this when we go into the last day of the season. Can you imagine how good that would be? Thank you, everybody, for getting involved. Massive turnout today, over 3,000 watching live. Quinny will tell you in the world of YouTube that is off the scale. That's madness. That's huge. You know, that's like, it's massive. It's unbelievable. Thanks, everybody, for your support. If you like what we do, give us a thumbs up on the video, subscribe to the channel on YouTube, and come and join us again tomorrow at 12:30 on A Celtic State of Mind.